Don't forget to like and subscribe.
It's Jim Keller, everybody. And welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Tech Poutine. How you all doing? It's been a hell of a week, hasn't it?
It's been a busy week.
Hell of a week. It's only Tuesday. There's still plenty more week to go.
It's so the whole point of this show is going to be around AMD's Advancing AI event. Both my co-hosts here were at that event. I wasn't. We were planning to try and organize a Poutine last week, but unfortunately everybody's flights was different and everybody else's sleep schedule was different. It's one of those things. George and I have noticed whenever we do a Poutine in the US, if we do it late Pacific, the traffic isn't as high because we all miss out on the European viewers. Do let us know in the comments where you guys are from. Always interesting to see what these analytics actually say versus what people do talk about. But yeah, interesting to hear your guys' thoughts from the event because I would have loved to have gone, but wasn't able. Thankfully, both of you, it's the time zone you're in, so
yeah, it's really a hop, skip, and a jump for me. So
yeah, and I'm only slightly farther away than George is.
When was your last event before this, Ryan?
About a year ago. It was another event down at San Jose. I want to say it was also an AMD event, but it may have been an Intel event. I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head.
It's we'll get into this in a bit because I'm pretty sure some of our time will be speaking about lives past. But do you miss the rat race?
I miss the people. I miss seeing new things. I missed helping put articles together. I don't necessarily miss the hard deadlines.
Yeah, that makes sense. I concur. For those of you who don't know, Ryan and I were the two of the three last people really holding AnandTech fort until AnandTech disappeared. It's almost been a year. Time does fly.
It's been more than a year.
No, it hasn't been a year yet.
Oh no. Okay.
10 months. Hot chips. End of hot chips. Because it's the last day of August. It's funny, Ryan. I think I've told you this before. People now recognize me purely from the stream, purely from the channel. They don't know anything of what I did at AnandTech. Just purely from Tech Potato.
Well, you publish a lot more videos for Tech Potato than you ever did for AnandTech, so that's not too surprising. Most people remember visual stuff far better than they do written works.
Yeah,
very true. And people don't read bylines anymore.
Oh, shoot, half websites hide them.
It's not wrong.
So I have a different take on that, and it depends on who you speak to. There are people who will read bylines and they will follow individuals. I always said that follow the writer, not the publication, because in our industry people do move about quite a lot. Some people are fixtures that stay there for decades. Timothy Prickett Morgan. Yeah, I'm not sure if he'll ever leave the Register / Next platform. Or our friend Paul Alcorn over at Tom's Hardware. He'll stay there until he retires, maybe. We'll see. But we do have a fun and interesting show for you guys to listen, to watch, to listen to. It mostly revolves around AMD. As I said, we've also got some interesting news about PCIe and other new chips coming up that I thought was exciting. We also had a week of events that we might not have time to go into because we've got like an hour and a half to 2 hour limit. What other events did you guys follow if you could?
I hadn't really followed any. Advancing AI kind of took up all the time. I was vaguely aware of GTC Paris. There was also not ISC, which top 500 happened. I
International
have a little,
supercomputing.
yep.
Yeah.
I have a little note here on the topic.
We also had WWDC, Apple's developer conference.
I was paying attention to that one.
You were, or you wasn't?
I was, yes. Won't go too far off topic here, but that one drew a lot of interesting feedback for Apple's new material design.
Arrow makes a comeback.
Aqua. We're Mac users. It's Aqua. Arrow doesn't exist in our universe.
Is this Windows 7 Reborn? I did see a title
like
with
that.
Yeah. Well, at least you can move apps around in iOS now. Good stuff.
So
okay.
No, I was just gonna say. So this thing, there was a video that dropped on the Xbox channel, like literally 30 minutes ago, and I'm just gonna read the title of it: Xbox plus AMD powering the next generation of Xbox, and it's just a minute of them saying how they're going to partner with AMD for their next generation Xbox. And everybody's just going, why did you need to make this announcement? This was never in doubt. Like, why?
It's I know Ryan and I we spent hours discussing the philosophy of the security that AMD has put into their chips to be enabled by Microsoft and Sony. You know, that's not something you can easily flip overnight.
No.
So, in terms of other events, we had London Tech Week this week. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend that either, but Jensen had the keynote there as well, which was a sit down with a politician talking, you know,
fun.
We also had VLSI. So one of the cornerstone IEEE events of the year. I was meant to go to that. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend. However, I do have all the papers. So I have been reading through. There's a lot to digest and not enough time in the day. Thankfully, however, you would say that we're coming up to a period of about 8 weeks of no events. No serious events.
Is it really 8 weeks?
So there's FMS in early August.
And then the week after that is SIGGRAPH.
Yeah.
Ryan used to always keep tabs on SIGGRAPH because of the GPU announcements. Next week is DAC, the Design Automation Conference. That's where all the EDA companies go. But aside from that, I've got I'm speaking at a conference in Shanghai, early July. Still not decided whether I'll be there in person, but yeah. Until then, it's hot chips. So we actually do get a summer this year. I remember the year before, we didn't. Everything was bang, 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 bang. The joy of being mid-cycle, I guess.
I'm just pleased as punch that Computex didn't fall opposite Memorial Day in the U.S. for the first time in a decade here.
It always lands on a bank holiday for us. So, yeah. It doesn't matter if it's a British holiday or an American holiday. I ended up working it anyway. So, all right, then let's go into the let's actually go into the intro sequence here and get this thing started. Hi everyone, and welcome to Tech Poutine, the weekly-ish podcast from More Than More, where we usually talk about processors and silicon and how we teach special rocks to think in very special ways. We call it Tech Poutine because my name is Ian and I run a channel called Tech Potato. My main co-host today is George from Chips and Cheese, and we have a guest. So they are the gravy. Ryan, welcome. You are a gravy this week.
Thank you. I've never been compared to a gravy before.
Are you a particular type of gravy?
I would like to hope that I'm something savory.
Savory gravy. But now we have a lovely tech poutine. But thank you for joining us. If we have a sponsor, this is where we'd put it as well. We don't. So again, your sponsors this week are just me and George, and we have some lovely, interesting merchandise to talk to you about later. But if you do wish to sponsor the show, do let us know. We do accept and read super chats made by our listeners and watchers on the air, but only if they don't demonetize the channel. And the show usually lasts a good couple of hours, sometimes more, but stick around and hopefully we'll get to your Q&A. But today's first question, as always, is guys, how you doing?
Good.
Doing well.
In this episode, the main topic is advancing AI. The AMD should be once every year, but they seem to be contracting it to now every 8 months. Is that a bit weird?
Yeah.
Considering how much money is at stake, everyone is going as fast as they can. So is it weird? I can't say no, but is it unexpected? Definitely not.
It's, you know, I went into this thinking, is there going to be much to talk about? We kind of know the roadmap already. We kind of know, we think we know what's going to go on ahead. But actually, I think it was for you guys well worth attending, wasn't it?
Oh yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. I do think you're right on the point that we did already know the roadmap, but now we know what the roadmap after this year looks like, and that alone is worth the price of admission.
It's always a fan of multi-year roadmaps, I think.
Has to be in this industry, despite how quickly everything is moving. Customers need to know where the hardware is going to be a year or two down the line. Can't be playing the ultra secretive game anymore.
Well, customers always knew. It was always how much they spoke to the rest of the world about the roadmap. I mean, I remember when, and I said this before, when AMD had their first Zen roadmap, they outlined, you know, Zen, Zen Plus, Zen 2, and then Zen 3, but they didn't update the roadmap until they'd completed Zen 3. Do we think AMD is going to actually every year increase their roadmap +1?
So long as NVIDIA does, yeah, I imagine AMD
I was
will
going
as
to
well.
say, I think they'll essentially have to follow what NVIDIA does, because
so fast follower.
Yes,
for the moment.
Like it's. I suspect that there actually won't be an MI600 update for a while. At least not until.
No, because there'll be an MI550.
There could no MI525.
We'll get there. I did want to highlight Ryan's great article over on the Substack. If you have time, please do go read through it. It goes into depth. We're going to go through most of it here on the show today as well. But if you want to sit down and read something, definitely go check that out for sure. And
if I may plug a little bit, I just published our look into CDNA4 at Chips and Cheese. And you guys can also look forward to a video interview with Alan Smith, Chief SoC Architect of Instinct at AMD. So
nice. You got one-on-one time.
Yes.
Very nice.
I actually asked Ryan if I could take one of his questions because it was a good question with a good answer.
How much did you have to wrangle for your one-on-one time?
It actually wasn't that bad, believe it or not.
Okay. I think we have some people to talk to, Ryan.
Oh, we always do.
Here's the link to the Chips and Cheese article as well. We will have Ryan's in the middle of writing our architecture deep dive as well. I will move on to the slide deck because this is what I want to go through at the show. Again, I wasn't there. These two were. Was it sufficient? Did they give you all everything you wanted?
So they were smart this time, and they actually followed some feedback. One, I think they've gotten a lot, and then one specifically that I've given. One, they split the general and technical tracks. So there was actually a technical deep dive this year, which was really nice. Was it quite as deep as I want? No, but it never is. So that's just a me thing. But it was pretty in-depth.
As a percentage, where was it?
It was a good 85-90%. It was very good. And I've heard that the general I would have been very bored at the general conference. So I'm glad that we went to the technical. And Ryan, as you know, they underestimated the demand for the technical session. That room was not big enough, nor had enough chairs for all the people that wanted to be in it.
Yeah, first rule of business in this industry: get there early, get yourself a chair, because otherwise you're going to be standing for a few hours.
Yep.
So this is funny, right? Because we always argue, and I remember going to this stuff. We always argue there are going to be 12 people who want the biggest deep dive possible. The thing is, there'll be 50 press who want to make sure they attend it in case they miss something, even if they don't understand it. And this is where companies like either AMD, Intel, NVIDIA always have to strike a balance of how deep do you go versus how many people in the room are going to come along for the ride. So even though the 50 press may not get much out of the deep technical, they just don't want them to miss it. FOMO.
Yeah.
But Ryan, you went on the analyst track. How was that?
It was interesting. As a as previously press, you don't necessarily get to spend a lot of time with executives just asking questions. Press presentation is more focused on products and specs and whatnot. So sitting in a room, listening to Forrest or Lisa or the software guys go on for a bit was interesting. I don't know if any of the questions were too surprising, but still, it's nice to get that kind of interactivity.
Did you get much out of it?
I got some bits and pieces. I think a lot of those questions ended up just being the kind of questions where you confirm that your suspicions, your hunches, things like that are correct. But other things such as UALink, which I imagine we'll talk about a bit later here, were made for some surprising revelations.
Oh, that's good. I'm looking forward to your write-up then.
And the thing that I'd been asking for that they did was they put the white paper into the press kit and had that ready day of announcement, which I was really happy about because I'd been pushing for getting white papers in announcements so that there are more technical details available should you want that.
Did we get that right?
It should be in the box.
I haven't checked box since the morning before the announcement.
Because that's usually what happens. Yes. Okay, let's go into this slide deck. Obviously, I followed from afar. I watched the live stream. I was able to catch up on some of the briefing and notes, and I pushed out a video. But yeah, the keynote: GPUs, more GPUs, more GPUs. If you aren't familiar, AMD is a GPU company on a good day. General bump to begin with. Where does AMD want to be? Performance, leadership, ease of migration. Key part of AMD strategy is how do we win over customers? Well, they need to migrate to our hardware. And this goes on about, this follows what Lisa, AMD CEO Dr. Lisa Su said earlier in the year about we're going to meet the customers where they are. We're going to be very forthright with software updates. I think they've announced like 6 new acquisitions in the past 2 weeks.
So funnily enough, they announced Lomini being acquired by AMD, or at least a team. So I think we asked in the last Tech Poutine, is AMD going to have the money to continue to
keep acquiring? Yes,
and I think the answer to that is yes.
Lamini, the team from Untether, the optical company, NSemi. There's another couple I'm blanking on. Bruin was Bruin was loads of acquisitions. And then I did notice our good friend Dr. Sharon Zhou from Lamini was on stage with Lisa at the end of the day doing Q&A. How was that? That was with Andrew Yang, wasn't it? Or were you not there? For
Yeah,
that
that was Lisa's sit down interview with Andrew. Well,
Yeah.
it was okay. It was more of a general audience kind of thing. Or I should walk it back. That was more of a developer kind of thing. It was technically a developer chat.
Yeah, I think when George said the general sessions were mostly developer sessions, weren't they?
Yeah.
Were there many customers and partners at the event?
Judging by
Quite a few, yeah.
judging just by looking around, by no means an official headcount. Certainly seemed like a lot of them.
So, if you were to put a rough estimate on attendance, 1,000?
Yeah, I'd say we had 1,000 people in the keynote hall for the initial keynote.
For the initial keynote, 1,000, 1,200, something like that. It was not GTC size, but I am very glad that it was not GTC size.
Yeah, that much is true. Although it's interesting comparison. I can go on a quick tangent here. The last time AMD held a GPU event here was 12 years ago. They, for a few years there, back when they were doing Fusion as a thing with their products, they had an event called APU 2011, 2012, 2013. APU 2013 was the last one of those events, and they held it at the San Jose Convention Center. Unfortunately, that was a sad little event, which is part of the reason why there wasn't another one. But just comparing that to this one shows how much AMD has grown. Yeah, they still don't fill out the convention center like NVIDIA or Apple do, but how many people they can get to show up in an event now versus admittedly 12 years ago for GPU stuff, it's a massive change. So they have come a long way.
That was during the Rory Reid era, wasn't it?
It sounds correct.
Yeah, because Lisa's been there just over a decade now. And yeah, going through the slides, AMD is keen to point out loads of people use their stuff now. And one of the key questions has always been, how many people use our stuff? Well, so some of these are systems companies, Lenovo, Supermicro, ASRock Rack. I think it's more about who's developing on the hardware. Like
I was going to say the first line of that, give or take, are sort of the big heavy hitters in that.
Yeah, for sure. And then you've also got Neo Clouds and such as well. It's like tier two CSPs, if you've never heard the term Neo Cloud before. So CSP is a cloud service provider. And then Sovereign AI. This just means national backed installations from governments, or in some cases, literal monarchies or academic engagements.
Or in one case that I'm noticing, actual business. ENI, Italy.
Yeah,
that's an oil company. So
is that the Oil National Company of Italy?
No, it's a private company, if I remember correctly.
Yep. So Sovereign also applies to essentially on-prem siloed installations.
Okay, so technically the Italian government owes 30.5%.
Okay. Yep.
But
not so much.
They are still largely a public company. Excuse me.
Okay. And we'll also get into this as well. This is the software slide. ROCm AMD software stack. More people, more support, more integration, and bi-weekly updates, which is always good.
Yeah, it sounds like they've taken on the agile method. So 2-week sprints.
There was a really funny demo that was a robot running on ROCm. I literally had to make the ROCm sock'em joke.
That's okay. I made one in the initial draft of the article on More Than More as well. Ian edited it out.
It's so good though.
Honestly, overused, but if in presence of robot, I'll give you a pass. It's actually, I want to think ROCm sock'em robots was more of a US thing, because the only way I know about it is through watching US based media.
Yeah,
rather than it being a talk. Yeah, one of those things. Yes, and as Zachary says, do you mean socket M? the new socket. So, roadmap, guys. How's the roadmap going? This is the lead image on the Poutine today. So
it's a long road, but AMD seems to be staying on it.
Given that we're seeing architecture update, HBM update, architecture update, HBM update, tick-tock, is this really a yearly cadence?
It is from a product standpoint. MI325X gets lumped into MI300 in my headspace. So MI350, I'm just comparing it to MI300 almost every way. But it is technically a different product, more bandwidth, a meaningful increase in bandwidth. There's nothing to sneeze at.
And realistically, MI3, if you look at the timeline, MI300 launched December 23. This is June 25. So
year and a half.
Yeah.
And it's available today. You can get 350 today.
Yeah, they were actually, I believe in the Q1 earnings report, they announced that they were shipping to partners already.
If this was traditional pre-AI environment, I would have said not everybody updates every generation, because that would be silly. But people are buying every generation this time round, even if not replacing. So, it's what exactly do you compare it to in that sense? If they're not replacing, they're not replacing, they're adding. But MI400 next year is another big jump. But let's talk about MI350. MI350, the new launched GPU. It's all about performance, I heard.
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, to distill this down to the basics, MI300 was kind of split between multiple roles. AMD used it as the basis for both an HPC chip, the MI300A with some Zen cores on it, and then a pure GPU as the MI300X. MI350 has no split personality going on. This is a chip that has been far more has been pushed far more into the GPU, far more into the AI side of things, well, matrix core side of things, I should say. So all of those resources get to go towards boosting matrix core performance.
There's three things on this slide that I think we'll get to in over time: performance, memory. We've got an increase in memory. But also standardization of a node, something that AMD's been fairly lacking. I want to start off with performance here, and I'll probably speak about what's on the next slide anyway. But I'm noticing here that it says 20 petaflops for FP4 and FP6, essentially having the same performance. If I go back and look at Blackwell, it's different. There's 20 petaflops, or however many petaflops for FP4, but it's half for FP6. So what's going on here?
So that was actually a question that Ryan asked. So this was the question I stole from Ryan.
Well, you can steal the answer as well.
I go ahead.
No. I'm telling you, you got to talk to Alan. Okay. Go ahead.
So the reason why is essentially what they did was instead of using their FP8 units to do FP6 work, they beefed up their FP4 units to do FP6 work. That's why their FP4 and FP6 numbers are the same, is because they're actually beefing up the FP4 unit instead of running it through the FP8 unit.
Is it actually an FP4 unit, or should we just consider it an FP6 unit?
It should really be more considered an FP6 unit.
And so the FP4 is essentially padded.
Yep.
To run in the FP6.
Yes.
Is this actual FP4 and FP6, or are they like obfuscating it because it should be micro scaled? Or
so this is micro scale. There's a slide about this in the technical briefing.
Yeah.
this is microscale, which is different, and I don't quite know how to explain because
you share some bits between 32 elements of data.
yes, it's kind of like
Sharing the
but
exponent, I
also kind of
believe.
not.
And with AMD, it's blocks of 32 datums, and with NVIDIA, it's a block of 16. So I wonder if this is going to cause translation confusion, like whenever NVIDIA likes to change the warp size.
NVIDIA hasn't changed their warp
I'm pretty
size.
sure that the spec is 32 datums.
You know, I was going to say
I'm pretty
NVIDIA
sure that that's what
changed.
the spec is, which, yeah.
Sorry, Ryan, we keep jumping in.
No, it's guys. I'm saying NVIDIA has never changed their warp size. It has been 30. The actual warp size from a software standpoint has been 32 ever since the first CUDA GPUs in 2007. So I'm not going to say nothing is impossible, but at this point they're pretty locked in on 32.
Okay, for some reason I thought it had changed at some point. Or the way it actually does it in the scheduler, it's agnostic to software, but
that would be fair. Yeah, the actual physical SIMDs are 16 wide, and its wavefront is executed over 2 cycles.
This middle section here, memory. I believe the MI325X was initially announced at 288, but then was reduced to 256. So now we have the full 288. I do know that this is Micron HBM 3E 36 gigabyte 12 high stacks. Whereas NVIDIA is using mostly SK Hynix, aren't they?
That's my understanding, yes.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're at this point both dual sourcing.
Yeah, that's the thing. This question came up in the analyst sessions. Was asking AMD who they're getting the HBM from. We know there's Micron, but AMD wouldn't even answer the question if anyone else is supplying HBM for them.
It's the reason I know it's Micron is doing a good chunk of it is because Micron issued their own press release.
Yeah, it's the only reason any of us know anything, it seems.
And then here it says supporting up to 520 billion parameters. That's obviously in a 4-bit mode on one GPU. And then we have the 8-way standard GPU node, which we'll definitely get to in the upcoming slides. This is it, 3 nanometer. Woo! Chiplets, woo! They have done something different here.
They've changed the layout.
Go on.
So if you notice, instead of them being, instead of the L2s being conjoined this way, it's actually just horizontal. So they've physically rotated the dies, which is interesting.
I'm also led to believe that with the standard 300 and 325, it was 4 base interposer chiplets, and now it's just 2.
So the reason why they had 4 was actually because of a TSMC limitation.
Right.
TSMC could only create essentially a 0.4 reticle die, a die of 0.4 reticle size, approximately what an MI300 base tile had, with the TSVs needed for stacking.
Right.
That is no longer the case, obviously, and they can have a lot bigger of a die and now just stack on top.
There's also apparently a plumbing reason for that from the AMD side of things. In order to be able to support 1/4 of the GPU being outfitted with CPU dies instead of GPU dies, those CPU dies needed to sit on their own interposer. So now that it's pure GPU, you don't need that kind of granularity.
Yeah. Unless they really wanted to do it all CPU.
Well, they did for Microsoft.
Yes, I know. And the interposers are actually built on N6, if I remember correctly.
Base dies, not interposers.
Yeah,
Base
George is correct. They're IO dies technically. So there's a lot going on here. They're not just simple interposers.
Active interposers, then.
No, because there is an interposer below. So there's an interposer, the base size, then the compute.
But isn't that a small bridge interposer, not a?
No, it's still a full.
Okay.
As far as we know, it's still a full.
Yeah.
CoWoS S interposer.
Yeah, it's chip on wafer on substrate.
Yep.
Sauce. Dash R. So these are the specs of the two new GPUs that we keep calling them GPUs. AMD keeps calling them GPUs. Argument whether we should keep calling them GPUs. Mr. Vipitis did ask, how do we read those instinct SKU numbers that almost match mobile CPUs now? These are the only two SKUs that they're telling us about.
And it's very easy. One's for air cooling, one's for water cooling. That's your difference.
Water or just liquid?
Technically liquid.
But yeah.
So I'll just nix the comments for a second here. Memory bandwidth, peak, flops, and yeah, we can really air cool 1,000-watt GPUs.
If you have a 4U high heatsink, yes.
Because if I remember correctly, last gen went up to 650.
750, yeah.
750
on air, just so to go to 1,000. That's it. That's toasty.
Oh,
We'll
yes,
see.
very toasty, very, very toasty.
And also designed to run flat out 24/7.
Correct, and that is an important distinction actually on these performance figures, especially for the air-cooled model. Even though it's designed to run 24/7, AMD doesn't expect real-world performance to be as close to the liquid-cooled models as the raw specs alone would indicate. Air-cooled model is far more likely to throttle.
Manuel S in the comments asks, what connector do they use?
Still the same OAM connector as before. OAM 2.0, I want to say.
I think 2.0 is required for anything over 750 up to 1,500.
We have this image here from Ben Badgerin over at Creative Strategies. Thank you, Ben. This one showing off the 8 OAM modules in a UBB, in a universal baseboard blade. So we can see here, essentially how they fit together as modules. And then this is the heatsink for air. They're heavy.
That is how you air cool a 1,000-watt GPU.
That is a weapon.
BFH.
Big freaking heatsink.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure the part number isn't BFH.
That would be funny.
But I'm sure perhaps you can see here, you can't see where I'm pointing to on the screen, but the PCB of the GPU, that's a thick boy. With 3 C's, super thick. I mean,
although not quite as thick as IBM's.
No. And what's funny is Dom and I are actually prepping a video about that. So that's fun. But this looks like it's at least 32 layers, if not 36 or more. Don't suppose anybody gave a number.
I unfortunately haven't bitten into enough PCBs, unlike you, to tell.
I just do it by eyesight. Unfortunately, this isn't high enough resolution. As I get older, I will lose that ability. But if people are looking at what the die looks like, why? So I saw this image. This is from Andreas Schilling over at Hardware Lux. Thanks, Andreas. Why is this one chromed?
I'm sorry, crowed?
Chromed, as in
chromed.
Yes. Because every time I've seen an AMD GPU like this one, it's got this, it's got the yellow yellow beigey shim around it. This one is chromed.
I mean, it's probably just a display sample.
I know, but why?
Because Chrome looks cool.
Yeah,
You're showing it off. This is all about the visuals.
What I'm seeing here is that this will it will have Chromium support, Chrome OS support, clearly, and as Will says, Chrome makes it go faster. We'll start having the Golf colors next and go faster stripes.
Where's my red?
Actually, Golf colors, and given that a bunch of these will end up in the Middle East.
Yeah.
That being said, I think Oracle announced they were going to have you could rent an instance of 131,000 of them at once.
Yes, which is if you assume that those are the 128 GPU racks, which we'll get to in a second.
Yeah,
that's 10,000. That's 120. Sorry, 1,024 racks. At $3 per GPU hour, which I believe is what was quoted, you're looking at about $400,000 per hour to rent that system. Easy.
Don't give it to a student who will cause a seg fault in the first 10th of a second and not realize until 10 hours later when he comes back to check. Does happen in HPC. Just put it that way. Now, this is a slide comparing AMD to NVIDIA just based on raw numbers. Interesting here that they chose the GB200 and the B200. Okay, good, 2x, 1.1x in peak throughput, especially the FP6 number. Though I got questions asking, why are they comparing to 200 not 300? Did anybody ask that?
Yes, it's because it's what's available right now.
Oh, so this is literally just, well, no, theoretical peaks we know for 300, surely.
We do, but they want to compare versus what's out right now because take your pick, either because they are being pragmatic or because it looks better for them.
I'm sure somebody's put a B300 or a GB300 comparison somewhere.
Well, okay. I also have, I suspect there's another reason why they didn't. And it's because they could be, as silly as this is, argued for not focusing on AI enough. Because if you look at GB300, the FP64 is cut to 1/32 of what GB200 has.
So FP64 to FP32, I think it was listed as 1/128 to 1, something insane like that.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's funny. I'm actually working on a video about reduced precision, about using intake units to emulate FP64. Because at one of the events,
they also cut into 8, by the way, in GB300. So
really,
yep,
FP all the way then.
Yeah, it's because int 8 is used as a storage type, whereas and isn't used in compute, whereas FP8 is used in compute. So
right, okay, fun times.
I am very glad that they did not, that AMD did not cut FP64 on MI350.
They did cut FP64.
Not yes,
compared
but
to the 300.
Realistically, if you look at the 300X versus the 300A, the 300A was basically comparable to the 300X, and the reason for that was FP64 was just there was too much compute for the memory bandwidth, so that's not.
So you're comparing 300A to 355X in that sense.
Yeah, That's probably the more I hate to
HPC
use the
comparison.
word. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And here are the two solutions: air-cooled, liquid-cooled, 350X, 355X. Looks kind of cool. Renders are renders, though, as always. Performance numbers. So to Ryan's point, if you want to look at true generation on generation improvement, you're looking at 355X versus 300X. You've got liquid cooled versus air cooled. You've got 288 versus 144 gigs of memory, and you've got the architecture improvement. So
I'm gonna say bad at AMD for this comparison because you're using a test that runs out of memory on 300X, whereas it doesn't run out of memory on 355.
Yeah, I got that as well. That's industry standard, unfortunately, whenever there's a memory capacity upgrade.
I know, and I hate it. It's...
Yeah. What, just like AI Max Plus being listed as 22 times faster than a 4090.
Yes.
Yeah, throwback to the consumer announcements. It's very hard to showcase memory capacity benefits without hobbling the old, because it's either yes or no almost, right? So here we have stuff that actually does fit on the GPU.
This is true. But if you look at the little bottom note, MI300X FP8 versus MI355X FP4.
So
God damn it.
To be fair, NVIDIA plays those games as well.
Yes, but I hate these games. Don't play these games.
You're talking about a workload improvement, not a generational improvement, which is different. And we want to see the generational numbers, not just the workload. Don't worry, George. I'm with you on this. Until we get to FP1, which is a sign bit.
Well, FP 1.56, I think, is where it's technically going.
5.8, I think.
1.58, yeah.
5.8, yes.
But yes, there are things like that going on. One of my clients would argue you're doing the math wrong to begin with. So interesting follow-up in due course on that later this year. And here we have large models against NVIDIA. Again, B200, GB200, not 300. This one is actually relevant because this is numbers we can find. And this is throughput with ISO data types as well. The thing is, this is just performance. This doesn't take into account power or ease of enablement, ease of deployment, all sorts of things that will be useful in due course. But here's the headline metric I think they wanted to go with. This is the thing they want to shout from the rooftops. Do you believe them?
I mean, maybe. The issue is that nobody really talks the dollar figure. So
yeah, if you know how much a GB200 system costs, please let me know, because right now it's all blind speculation.
It also depends on your scale up versus scale out, right? I'm pretty sure this is a comment on an 8-way box versus an 8-way box. Very
likely, yes. Yeah, assume it's going to be whatever scenario is best for AMD.
And to bring up what Will said, what is dollars? Is it TCO? Is it cost? Is it power?
So I think if I remember what was said in the general, because I went back and I watched through the general press conference, and yes, I would have been bored. I think it was TCO, if I remember correctly. So
yeah, so because if you actually do the math on a lot of these things, your biggest cost is actually purchasing the equipment, not running it, given the cost of power against, even if you run it 24/7 for 6 years, the acquisition cost is still anywhere from 50 to 70% of your total cost of ownership over that time. So it will depend on how cheap you get your stuff for as well, and how cheap you get your power. Our friend Jordan says TCO is voodoo accounting math.
Yeah, just reading AMD's official note here. Performance per dollar calculated with current pricing for B200 available from CoreWeave website, and expected Instinct MI355X based cloud instance pricing.
Okay, so it's spot pricing, essentially.
Yes, spot pricing in the cloud.
Yep. So, yeah, not if you want on-prem solutions.
Unfortunately, that's probably about as close as you can get in realistic numbers, unfortunately.
So here we move on to training, which is AMD's main focus this year. Is we want to enable training. We've been enabling inference. Now customers want to know about training. Here's some training numbers. 8-bit training, 16-bit training. Nobody knows how to do sparsity yet on training. So all those performance numbers, petaflop numbers, you need half because they were sparse numbers. That sort of thing. It's going to be interesting to hear who exactly is doing training on AMD long term and how easy it is. I assume Anoush got up at one point to talk about enabling this.
He pulled a bobber. Developers.
Oh, lovely.
So that was he did that in the technical discussion, and I had to hold my tongue so hard to not just burst out belly laughing.
What like the time we Joe McRae called them economy cores?
Yes.
Yeah. Dove Jones asks, was he sweating?
On
like
stage,
was.
Yeah, I think he was, because those lights are, if you've ever been on stage, stage lights are not
they're ridiculously hot.
Yeah.
If say member of the press for smaller events, Jensen will get off the stage as soon as he can. Those things are very hot.
Well, yeah, to get lights out of his face mainly, and so he can see people. Mind you, I'm a sweaty lad, so I don't bemoan anyone else who sweats. This slide, competitive training performance. Again, the comparison I keep getting when people showed me this was, well, 300 is just around the corner and going to beat it out the water. Is there anything AMD could have done differently here?
I mean, the thing is, realistically, what does GB300 add? That would affect these results.
More like it takes away leaks.
Well, but, there is that.
No, the simple answer is not much, because the memory bandwidth hasn't gone up.
Oh, NVIDIA's argument would be, well, you can use an NVL72, not just an 8-way.
You're gonna get a rant about that in a minute once we get there, but you're gonna hear a rant from me about this.
Okay, so NVL72 is NVIDIA's 72-way GPU rack, where the scale up means that all 72 GPUs act in one domain. It's like going to your task manager and seeing 72 GPUs, and theoretically you have similar access to all of them. This is what we call rack scale, and everybody's been asking AMD, where's your rack scale? And they acquired a company that that acquisition closed earlier this year, called ZT Systems, acquired for $5 billion. They then sold $4 billion of it off to leave the $1 billion worth, who's going to design racks. And this is their first set of racks, built on MI350, using 5th gen EPYC, Turin, which is already out. Instinct GPU MI350 series, which was just announced and is now available. And the Pensando Polara Network Interface Card, or NIC, which is the this is their 400 gig.
Yes, 400 gig.
Well,
what is it? The Pensando Polara 400 AI.
Yeah, it's 400, 800 if you want to do 532 chicanery, but yeah.
But the idea here is that in a rack, you can get something similar to what the competition is offering, but the buts that skipped most people away. I actually want to see if the next slide is the slide I think it is. Yeah. So these are 3 different racks. AC for air-cooled, DLC for direct liquid-cooled. You can get 64, 96, 128, telling you how much memory, how much performance. I do want to ask you guys here before I get into it. What is it? Do you see underneath it says 20U, 30U, 6U? Do you know what that's meant to mean?
I have a sneaking suspicion that that was a typo.
It's not 20U, it's 20U.
Oh.
I'm assuming that's the height of the node sizes, but
no, the DLC racks looks the same.
Well, the thing is, yeah, that's not a 0, it's the letter O. So Jordan's saying it's OCP rack. So OCP rack units. So the 30U is 50% taller than the 20U.
That doesn't make sense. Because it's fewer GPUs, unless this is referring to a specification called 20U, 30U, and there's different like redundancies built in and whatnot, stuff like that.
So I assume between the 350X and the 355X, it's your 19-inch rack units versus 21-inch rack units. That's fine. I can get behind that. But anyway, so we learned that these GPUs aren't like what I think we were promised. Isn't that right? In terms of UALink over Ethernet. Who wants to take that one?
That's an MI400 thing.
Yeah.
Oh. But these look like they should all be in one domain, right?
Well, NVL 72 isn't in one domain.
Yeah, AMD's line for now is that most of their customers only need an 8-way GPU domain, so the UBB8 form factor is fine for scale up. The reality, of course, is NVIDIA is doing much bigger scale up. AMD needs to catch up, and they won't be able to do that until the next generation. So they're going to give you whatever makes them sound the best, but that's where things stand.
Yeah. Okay, we'll cross that when we get to it then. But these solutions here, these rack scale, coming Q3 for general, from all these players: Oracle, Dell, Supermicro, Eviden, Gigabyte, ASRock, Crusoe, TensorWave, MSI.
Hot Isle.
Yeah. Compal. With a user replaceable screen as well, I guess. And yeah, this is the roadmap essentially, going from the 2024 rack, which I guess wasn't officially spoken about until today. Then we have the 2025 rack, which is the today one, and then the 2026 rack for next year, which I think is the next slide. Helios. Who wants to talk about Helios?
Helios is wide. Kudos to Ian for picking up on this first. I didn't realize this until later, but that is a double wide rack. Helios is not a single wide rack like the examples shown for the current generation MI350 stuff, or NVL 72 for that matter. And long story short here, there is a very good reason for that. And that is making a single wide rack with the 72 GPUs in it with liquid cooling very hard, very fraught with problems. AMD, for this project at least, wanted to do something that was going to be a bit more sustainable. It could use more off-the-shelf parts and would be easier and more reliable is what it comes down to. So they went double wide. And the
Power
thought here is
density,
essentially,
ruling density.
yeah, so you got half as much power per square foot to deal with. And the thought here is essentially the simplicity and the reliability are more valuable than the floor space in a data center, because what's capping your data centers right now is total power consumption anyhow, whereas land is still pretty cheap.
Yeah. I mean, even if you look at the NVL72, it's meant to be one rack, but you need like 2 other racks to have all the power
So the
and the cooling
NVIDIA,
gubbins.
the NVIDIA design is the NVL72 and then the sidecar. Some of the bigger hyperscalers have NVL72 sidecar.
Right. So yeah, the reason why you put so much stuff close together is because you want high-speed copper interconnects. We're not yet at optical. But as Jensen says, copper is cheap. It works, and it's cheap. So we're going to stick with copper as long as possible. But was it you, George, who was telling me that Forrest was saying something about power density and compute density perhaps decreasing? Was that you, Ryan?
Yeah, that was me. So yeah, that was one of the insights I got from talking to Forrest. Forrest's thought of the matter is that overall racks are going to move away from current densities, and we're going to step back to lower densities once co-packaged optics takes off and allows for systems to be a little farther apart while still maintaining the same level of performance. Right now, everything is crammed together because it has to, because yes, copper is cheap, but copper does not go very far.
Yeah, I've seen people saying copper at 800 gig should be okay for distances perhaps up to 2 meters. Once you hit 1.6, yeah, good luck.
1.6,
so
you're gonna have to move to optical.
But also, I've heard the weight of the cables actually matters as well, because these things are a few thousand pounds, right?
Yeah.
So, but what is in Helios?
So Helios is a combination of AMD Venice, which is their new upcoming Zen 6 architecture, which they did disclose a little bit about, that has up to 256 cores on N2, 1.6 terabytes per second of memory bandwidth. So that's likely a 16-channel MRDIMM 12800 setup, PCIe 6, and
CXL3.
They didn't say anything other than PCIe 6.
Okay.
And they said performance 1.7x, but they didn't give any actual specifications on what that number is for. They didn't give any disclosures on that. They were just like 1.7x. So
yeah,
great.
Yep.
Means nothing.
So that's the CPU. What about the GPU?
The GPU is MI400, and that is going to be, I have to pull up the slide real quick, but that is 432 gigabytes of HBM4.
I think we actually get to that in a future slide.
Oh, do we? Okay.
Yeah, let's save that for a second.
Okay, so MI400, the Pensando Volcano NIC, which is their 800G NIC, and then ROCm 7 and/or 8 and/or whatever version of ROCm comes with it.
And ultra accelerator link, UALink.
Yeah, UALink, which I don't know if you have the slide, the disclosures for it, but there's some interesting stuff there, because it's if you read the paper on it, it's very GMI, which for you guys who don't know, GMI is AMD's link between CPUs and between two CPUs in a system, as well as between the I/O die and the compute die. So,
well, the standard 1.0 version of the standard is what, 532 pages long, and was
yes.
announced the day before AMD's event.
No, that's Ultra Ethernet.
Oh, sorry, that's Ultra Ethernet. Yeah, I'm getting confused.
UALink has been out since April.
Okay.
Yeah, and the important part here for people who aren't terribly familiar with UALink is that AMD essentially donated a significant part of their Infinity Fabric technologies and IP to that project. So while UALink is not solely next-gen Infinity Fabric, yeah, it's not too surprising to hear from George that it shares a lot from GMI, because that's its lineage.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a breakdown of performance of that MI400 as George was talking about. So yeah, they have a GPU domain of 72, which is apparently the same as Vera Rubin. And the whole point here is more memory, HBM4, which they called it. Did anybody call it custom HBM4 by any chance at the event?
No,
No.
it was just HBM4.
Okay. It's
So
argument I've been having, or I agree with Annapurna on custom HBM4. It's a discussion we won't rehash because I have covered it on the channel before. But this is all next year stuff.
That is why I love this slide. It's about hardware that AMD hasn't seen yet, comparing it to hardware that's I'm not even sure is even taped out yet on the AMD side. So
if they're launching it next year, it would have to be close and or already in tape out.
Yeah. And the thing is, this is also theoretical comparison. And yet I complained that we didn't get a theoretical comparison on GB300. But they did it with this.
exactly.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So actually, I think the most interesting, so like I was saying, we don't know if those are sparse numbers. I never actually got clarity on that, if those are sparse flops or not, but an increase in flops, as you would expect. Either 2 or 4x, depending on what exactly those numbers are, versus MI355. 432 gigabytes of HBM4 memory capacity, and a memory bandwidth of 19.6 terabytes per second. This tells you that they're actually using 12 stacks of 36 gigabyte HBM4 stacks, which are likely the exact same stacks that NVIDIA is using for Rubin. So there's going to be a fight between the two for HBM4 capacity potentially. And then the interesting number here, in my opinion, is 300 gigabytes per second of scale out bandwidth per GPU.
That confused me.
So that means. Sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
I would say so that one's interesting. So this requires a little knowledge of the NICs that are going to be paired with it. The AI or the Pensando Volcano 800 NICs, those are going to accept both PCI Express and UALink. So what's going to happen is AMD is just going to use UALinks coming off the GPUs to route directly to the NICs. So you're looking at 3 links going out to NICs of 100 gigabytes a second each.
Are they using UALink or are they using GMI?
UALink.
So they're actually keeping the protocol the same. Interesting.
To me, so that means that I assume that's 3 by 100.
Yeah, it would need to go to three NICs.
Yes, it's 3 NICs at 800G, which is 100 gigabytes per second.
Yeah,
per NIC. So there will be 24 NICs in an 8-way GPU system.
That sounds like Gaudi.
Yes, it does. Unfortunately, Gaudi died, so
Yeah. But yeah, so given that it's 12 stacks of HBM4, I assume we're going to have what looks like a 2x2 array of compute dies and then 3 HBMs attached to each compute die. Because I think that's what TSMC's been showing off at their events of their next stage of packaging.
That, or it could be take MI300 and just make it bigger. Either or.
Well, yeah, same thing. Just
Well,
enough space for another HBM on that side, yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas Vera Rubin's going to have 16 HBMs, but that's because it's 4 lots of 2x2.
Yes.
You know, just to confuse everybody. Do we believe this graph? This is.
I believe it is a graph.
Oh, wait, hold on.
That
No,
is
there's
the best
something funny
answer.
about this graph. There's something really, if you look at the endnotes, that comparison is 8 GPUs to 72 GPUs.
So it's
with no, it's why you don't need the slide.
it doesn't state whether it's linear or logarithmic or I think it's meant to explain changing the trajectory of performance.
Yes, but it does a horrible job of it.
But I think it's because it just references the instinct. If it was to talk about the solution, then it might be fairer. You know what I mean?
But I still don't like this graph at all.
Yeah.
Like, it's pain. So this slide is interesting. So there may have been a typo on this slide. We don't know if it's Verano or Verano, because there's no city in Italy called Verano. But there is Verano, which swaps the O and the A.
You mean
However,
Verona?
Yes, Verona or yeah, that doesn't exist. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's the reason why you give your product place names is that place names can't be trademarked.
Yes.
So Verona makes sense. But this is Helios Plus, but with MI500.
Yeah.
So there's no mention of an
MI450. They
No.
haven't given this a name yet. It's using the same NICs as Helios. But we don't know if the epics are using Zen 7 or Zen 6. I think the rumor mill is saying that it's Zen 6, but I'm not positive.
I'm curious what they'd change there. Venice is already going to be on TSMC 2 nanometer. There's not going to be something substantially better than that available just a year later.
I wonder, and this is my own speculation, if with 500 series, they're going to be moving to a full APU stack, and they're just naming the APU version of Venice a slightly different name.
I like your thinking.
That's something that I've been mulling on. There's also potentially maybe it's a different SKU, because we know that we have Siena and Genoa for Zen 4 and Bergamo. Maybe this is just a different cut of Zen 6. Who knows?
Maybe it's using next gen UALink. And it's still Zen 6, but UALink 2.0 or PCIe 7.
I wouldn't expect UALink 2.0 that soon.
No, but it's yeah. I'm just thinking TSMC's. There could be some packaging differences. It could be Venice, but with interposers between compute die. So you have faster core to core. There's a lot. The good thing about semiconductors these days is it's almost like Lego, but only if you can find enough people to work on it and a market for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And MI500. I will notice one thing is that this next gen AI rack, every blade looks the same.
Yes, which is interesting.
It's so the thing is, this is Helios, obviously god of the sun. Selene is god of the moon. Selene is the daughter of the Titans Hyperion and Theia, and sister to Helios and Eos, the goddess of dawn. Selene, at later times, was also identified with Artemis. I've heard a lot of those code names before on other products.
Yeah.
It turns out mythology is what people like to pluck from.
So
that and Polaris for some reason.
Do you know how many companies I've managed to steer away from using the name Polaris?
good.
No, I
there's already
don't.
Too
How
many
many?
of them.
I think I'm on my third now.
Oh, goodness gracious.
And there's another company that I don't work with that I know that their next generation product is also called Polaris. So yeah, you're not going to get away.
So Ian, do you know Polaris? You know, the one that came before Xeon Phi? Yeah, that Polaris.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So
anyway,
this is pretty much the final slide of the brief deck. AMD saying, "Hey, we're at so many people, growing customer momentum, shipping today MI350 customers, and MI400 are previewing Helios." What they didn't speak about in this deck, which is in other decks, is a lot deeper into the architecture. We'll save that for the articles because that can go pretty deep. Also, the software side, ROCm 7. So we've gone from 6.4 to 7 pretty quickly, and enablement of things like ROCm on Windows, and stuff like that. And then also they had a networking deck, which we didn't get into. Also, I think going a bit more into the rack details, if I remember correctly. So all sorts of other things going on. And if you were here at the top of the episode where George was mentioning all the sessions he was in, Ryan having time with executives in some group Q&As. I can't wait to hear the insights that we got from those as well. We did have some discussion questions. Unless you want to add something before I get into the discussion questions.
No, so the first discussion.
I have something I'd like to add before we get into discussion questions.
Go for it.
Since we didn't jump into the networking deck, so important bit here on the state of UALink for the MI400 products. So UALink will be ready in AMD Silicon with MI400. UALink switches will not be ready in time for MI400. So in order to actually get UALink out the door and to enable scaling up beyond a single 8-way system, AMD and the other consortium members are actually going to be running UALink over Ethernet for these first generations of products. By going over Ethernet, then they can just use standard Ethernet, high-speed Ethernet switches to wire up all these systems. And then proper UALink switches will then become available further down the line.
So actually, if you go and you look at the UALink spec, the spec allows for this.
Yeah.
It's actually designed for this. So that's why I take a bit of an issue of people saying, oh, this is not really UALink. Yes, it is. You're just using a slightly different packet method. Whoop-de-doo.
You're adding in the an Ethernet latency.
Yes, but realistically, you're actually the way that they're doing it actually isn't all that different from how NVLink works, because it actually sometimes does essentially NVLink over InfiniBand, from what I understand. So that's not that unusual in terms of repacketizing a scale-up fabric.
So Owen has a question here. Do you mean UALink over normal Ethernet or UALink over Ultra Ethernet?
Over normal Ethernet, I believe. No one mentioned Ultra Ethernet when talking about UALink over Ethernet.
So, interesting thing, I know for a fact that the UALink consortium and the Ultra Ethernet consortium are talking to, I believe, standardize all this. So I would not be surprised if in MI500 we see UALink scale up and then UALink over in Ultra Ethernet or just Ultra Ethernet or something. So I would not be surprised if that comes with MI500.
Yeah, Ultra Ethernet itself will come with the Helios system. The NICs there for the Poutine NICs do support Ultra Ethernet. So
I know you said the switches won't be ready, but I'm looking through the deck here, and AMD had both Juniper and Arista.
Also Cisco.
And Cisco, yeah. As part of this engagement. So is somebody just not giving enough money in a particular direction, or is it just difficult?
I think it's just time to market kind of thing. Remember, UALink spec was only released back in April, I believe George said. It just doesn't sound like that they can have switches ready in time to go for 2026.
And there's also wasn't Broadcom part of the Ultra Ethernet consortium?
So,
and then they dropped out, and then they came back, but they're not a key.
So
they're not.
So I went and I talked. So UALink, they withdrew from UALink, but then rejoined and are a full member again. And they
just
are
not a founding member.
Yes, I don't quite understand what happened there, but I have a sneaking suspicion that it had to do with some of the stuff within how AMD released GMI to UALink, and I think it has to do with that. If I had to take a gander, because that's what it felt like.
It's I know I've seen some discussion about NVIDIA versus Broadcom versus everyone else on high-speed SerDes and connectivity and everything else. Is that anything to do with this?
I don't see why.
It could very well. One thing to keep in mind here is that Broadcom was, and I think technically still is, pitching their own idea for scale-up fabric with that, funny enough, named SUE, scale-up Ethernet framework.
Yes. Yeah.
So SUE is weird. I think they're still pitching it, but I think they were expecting more industry adoption on that side, and people are just like, eh. That's my personal opinion.
I did read a good chunk about this. Where was it? I'm not going to be able to find it in time. I do want to address one question, because I know Ryan has a hard stop here in a few minutes. It's at what point can AMD even catch up to NVIDIA? Key question that investors are going to ask. Do they have to catch up?
So long as the market keeps growing, no, they don't have to catch up, because they can always take a slice of pie for themselves. As for when AMD does catch up, AMD wants to be in a leadership position in the MI400 generation. Of course, what is AMD supposed to say? No, we don't want to be in leadership position in the next generation. But AMD is pushing hard. The reality is that NVIDIA always has something up their sleeve for the next generation that they don't announce too far in advance. So the goalposts keep getting moved by NVIDIA. If AMD doesn't achieve leadership for the next generation, they're still going to be closer than they are in the current generation. So we're getting there.
If I may cover discussion point 1, because I'm going to have a little bit of a rant here. should these actually be called rack scale solutions? I think we're asking the wrong question here. I think the real question, and here's my hot take, folks, is NVL72 a rack scale solution? And I'm going to say no, it's not. And for one simple reason. It's not a single system image between all 72 GPUs in a system.
You mean you can't do the SMI and get 72 GPUs?
Oh no, you can, but you can do that in the same way that a supercomputer can do it. And the way that you actually orchestrate the 72 GPUs they recommend is Slurm, which is a job processing or job allocation front end. How is this any different than hooking up 9 MI355X nodes and putting Slurm on the front?
Because it's faster.
Great, you have a faster interconnect, but SGI already beat everybody to the punch on this when we had SSI on 64 Itaniums back in the early aughts.
Well, we also have glueless logic and stuff already on Xeons. It's the way I want to define it, because I think it's important to define rack scale, really. You know how we do our cache latency diagrams, L0, L1, L2, L3, DRAM, or whatever. And then eventually you get to the memory of another chip. And the idea being that, okay, how many hops does it take? And that adds latency, but your bandwidth is here. I think the argument here is just simply orders of magnitude. So for a scale up solution is just simply a lot faster to access the compute and memory of another node versus scale out, where you have additional either Ethernet or Infinity latency added in. That I think is the underlying industry definition of scale up versus scale out in this case.
And that's my understanding as well.
Yeah. So I know that's 11:59 here on the West Coast. Ryan, I know you have a hard stop at 12. So any final thoughts?
Final thoughts are looking forward to seeing how MI350 does in action, but MI400 I think is going to be the more interesting thing to come out of AMD. Looking at their current stack, MI350 is a mid-generation refresh, which is not to knock it. Just the big picture, the reason to pull everyone together for the Advancing AI event was not the 350 launch; it was to show where they're going to be with MI400.
Did they give any narrower indication other than 26?
Nope.
So not even first half versus second half.
Not even first half versus second half. My assumption would be second half. Probably later in the year, but we'll see.
I think we'll hear about it in the financials first.
Very likely. All right, great. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for joining.
Say bye to Ryan, everyone. Thanks, Ryan. We've got to have you on again.
Yep.
Absolutely.
You got to choose a gravy this time.
I'll work on that. All right, have a good one.
Thanks to Ryan. I did want to bring up this article because this is where I've read about UltraEthernet UEC versus UALink versus Broadcom scale-up Ethernet SUE. It's written mostly by Tanj. I know Tanj going to events. He's a good dude. This goes into a good amount of detail. This is the UEC release candidate. That's 565 pages. And it goes into the differences between all these three. Also speaks about AMD Polara. And if you're a fan of networking, why? But also read this. I'll drop a link for people to have a read. But yeah, this AMD in a nutshell. Let me go back to our document here. It's a shame I couldn't go. It would have been good to see everyone and the team. I think it's this is the thing, right? We did our content. Ryan did an article. I did a video, and I know you've got your stuff coming up.
Mhm.
The criticisms essentially came down to, yeah, AMD will never catch up to NVIDIA, so what's the point in paying attention? Or NVIDIA's even gaining market share this year, revenue share this year against AMD. What's the utility beyond? It's rough. It's almost like.
Well, if that's, I'm sorry, if that's the way you're thinking, then do you just like monopolies? Like,
yeah,
that's such backwards logic, in my opinion.
No, they're investors.
So they do, in fact, like monopolies. Got it.
Yeah. So competition breeds innovation. And okay, there are some limitations on things like packaging and manufacturing, but the way we do things, it's if you've got one company in the room that's worth 90% of the industry, the other 9 companies in the room are going to band together to try and compete. That's why we have closed standards versus open standards. This is why NVIDIA has to support Ethernet through Spectrum X, because it turns out not everybody wants to buy InfiniBand, that sort of thing. And then even then, Spectrum X is Ethernet, but it's its own like flavor of Ethernet as well.
Yeah.
So it's we're only going to be going on for, I guess, another half hour here, but I do want to hit out mid-show sponsor spot, just so everybody is aware. We're going to take a minute to talk about our sponsors and the ways you can support us, but because we don't have any sponsors, it's just me and George. So please do come, and the best thing you can do is subscribe to our channel and click notifications to make sure you are the first to hear about the crazy and interesting stuff that we do. I know I've still got, today I actually dropped my video on bulk graphics. That's 40 minutes. We've got several coming up about transistor roadmaps and stuff. So you definitely should check those out. You've got your interview.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know when that'll be out?
Hopefully that should be out. I'm aiming by Friday. That's my aim.
Now, this is also the point where I'd say there's also a merchandise store, shop.techtechpotato.com. But I want to get your guys' opinion on something. I'm going to upload an image, and I'll tee it up, but I won't upload it straight away. I'm currently working on a short video about a new joint venture between NXP and Vanguard Semiconductor, 2 semiconductor companies that like to build their own chips. They're using a bunch of old tools from TSMC. TSMC is selling them a bunch of tools. And the new joint venture is called VSMC. Now, we've got TSMC, which is Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing company. We've got ESMC, which is the European semiconductor manufacturing company. What exactly does the V in VSMC stand for?
Vanguard?
This was my thought. The Vatican Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. The Pope making chips for the Lord.
Yeah.
If you're into
wasn't that Pat?
Pat Gelsinger did postscript. He still does postscripture every Sunday. His new company is all about digitizing the church as well. Obviously, AI is trained on pictures of Pope Francis, and so we have a variety of images here to refer to the Catholic Church investing in semiconductors. The question is this too on the nose for merch?
Well, see, you have the perfect image here because you have the white smoke, so that tells you when the new chip has been created.
Yes, the new generation.
Yes.
That completely passed me by, even though we've just had Conclave. Yeah.
Thank you, Schmidt, for reminding me of that. That was pretty funny.
Bless the chips as they came out of the factory.
Yeah.
I mean, this joke could play, but
It could, but some may be offended by it.
I'm not one to. I mean, everybody's going to be offended at something at some level. The question is, at what point is it taken a bit too far? So big thanks to Dom on this. He actually generated these, and these are true Pope chips.
Mm.
So it's
when you need a higher power VSMC.
Yeah. What 1.21 gigawatts? Oh no, that's a different white-haired guy.
Yeah.
Yes. So it could be a fun thing. I'm not decided whether to do it, and I'm not sure if I'm tapped out with mugs and T-shirts right now. So
here's the question: would you make a joke about? Would you be willing to replace the Pope with an imam?
But what does the V mean in that context? If it's an I,
so irrespective of the V, would you be willing to sub out the?
No, well, no, because I would argue that the Catholic Church has been more pliant when it comes to humor.
Fair.
And so yeah, it's an interesting debate to have. But yeah, so you don't get this sort of merch at any other YouTuber. They all play it safe, and you get the worst hardware of the year or outrage pony for our friends at PC World. So
no,
blessed be thy chips. Yes.
Are you gonna eat the holy wafer during communion?
It's
you need to have one
this is my blood and this is my body and this is for afters. Do we have a new holy water spin coating for deposition? Yeah, so fun stuff. But yeah, if you're really interested in helping us and me being able to feed George at events, head on over to shop.techtechpotato.com, along which is arguably the best way, along with having YouTube Premium, and also follow along so you get our content. Thank you all. Yeah, Jeff over at Craft Computing again. These jokes could keep going. Yeah. Do you really want to have the Techies Bible?
Since the Pope is from Chicago, instead of making wafers with water, with ultra purified water, you can be making it with ultra purified Malort now.
It's IBM Methuselah, the 1,000-year-old, right? Or do we have to talk about Bell Labs in here somewhere? Yeah. Anyway,
find the Pope in the wafer. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that like Where's Waldo? So did you know that Where's Waldo is actually called Where's Wally in the UK?
Really?
Yep. Yeah, it's the son, the father, and the cousin and the cousin. Cousin by marriage, just to point it out there. One of their grandfathers married one of their one of their grandparents married one of their great grandparents.
So
something like that.
No, it's the father, the cousin, and the cousin, because you have Pat, and then the cousin of the cousin.
Well, no, it isn't one of the original founders of Vera part of the same family technically,
Probably.
or something like that.
I have no idea.
Yeah, the Holy Land is Sinchu. We get it.
And the new Bible includes the UALink spec. That's funny.
No, no. It's not Zach. It's not say 5 hail Fermis. It's if you're bad after you pass, you fall into a pit of Fermi. You know, where we make the eggs and stuff. So, I do want to, because we're not going to be going too long here. Let's. I said you guys can go read, but do you want to speak a little bit about
yeah, so
CDNA4?
I can probably, so there's actually an error in the article. The core count for MI300X is incorrect. It should be 304, not 288. So slight correction will have to be made there. But yeah, so in terms of the architecture, actually CDNA4 does not rock the boat. There is actually very few changes here. In terms of at least the caches, the single biggest change is actually the if you scroll down, is the larger LDS. Instead, GCN for the longest time has had a 64K LDS or local data store. With CDNA4, that's now 160 kilobytes for its LDS. Now, there's two possible configurations for this. Either it's 80 banks of 2 kilobyte banks, because prior the LDS was 32 banks of 32K each per bank, or it's 64 banks of 2.5K of SRAM per bank.
Just to confirm here, these are your diagrams, not theirs.
These are Chester's.
Yeah.
But because Chester wrote this article up. They did double the read bandwidth to 256 bytes per clock, but
yeah.
Other than that, because the MI300 was built for HPC, they really didn't need to change much of the cache hierarchy at all, because it was already very well fed. So,
I mean,
there have been some additional instructions added, and then of course the new matrix unit, but this is not rocking the boat. This is very much
is this teeing up for MI400?
So thanks to AMD making oopsie poopsies in their LLVM commits again, which is how we first learned of Strix Halo, we know that the next generation CDNA is likely going to be GFX 1250. Now, just for some of you guys who don't know what GFX is, Vega, or GCN5, was GFX 9, which CDNA 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all GFX 9 derived architectures, with GFX 950 being CDNA 4. With the next generation of CDNA, CDNA 5 with MI400, what we're going to see is a move to GFX 12. Now, for you guys who don't know, GFX 12 is RDNA 4. So they're going to be moving to a brand new architecture that they're finally moving off GFX 9. And so that's going to be a big move for them. Whether this is teeing up for MI400 for 400 or not, maybe. Some of these changes will likely be kept, such as FP6 and FP4 being the same rate. Added BF16 vector ALU operation accumulating to FP32. Yeah, that's probably also going to stay. But we may see an expansion on what's known as VOPD, or the dual issuing Wave 32. Kitty. Kitty went bye-bye.
So just a question here. I thought we were moving to UDNA.
So you know
What
the story
happened?
as well as I do. Let me put it to you this way. I think UDNA is just a marketing name.
You mean like we had Genoa and Bergamo, and in 5th gen we just called it all Turin.
Yeah.
At some point we're just going to call it all UDNA, even though it's different variants that do different things.
I mean, look at Blackwell and Blackwell. They're very different.
203, yeah. Or do you mean
GB
consumer and enterprise?
GB 200 and
300.
And then 5090. Like,
yeah, consumer and
very
enterprise,
different architectures, right? So
P and E core. It's still 6th gen.
Yeah.
That's annoying. But I mean, why even suggest UDNA at all in the first place? Yeah. So.
But yeah,
it's I'll post a link to this article again, just because it's still a good shout to watch, to read. Sorry. We could go through Rockham 7, because we've only got a few minutes left here. I'm going to go skip straight to the tech boxes because I want to talk about this.
I want to talk about top 500 real quick, but okay.
PCIe SIG releases PCIe 7 specification to support the bandwidth demands of artificial intelligence. You might think, oh, okay, new PCIe specification. This is formalizing version 1.0. And yeah, okay, standard slide saying doubling, every 3 years. I did ask them, can you not speed that up? And they went, it depends on the members. If the members are really gung-ho, we could go 2.5 years maybe, but realistically 3 years makes everybody happy because they've got to design testing and validation and everything else, because it's a massive interoperability standard. The reason why I bring it up here is that this press release is about 300 words. 100 of them are me.
Nice.
So PCIe, this massive standard that everybody does, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of companies that are part of this, and none of them got a quote in to this press release. Just me.
Nice.
They asked. I didn't charge.
Yeah.
Industry standard sort of thing, and and you could say that my thing is actually a little bit generic. Rising demand for both compute and networking enabled through PCIe is an all-time high, despite the complexities of creating standards. Data centers are ready to start deploying networks built on PCIe 7 technology because they're always ready to be built. But almost every ASIC company I talk to is engaged with IP providers and set to take advantage. Even with popularity and focus went into PCIe 6, PCIe 7 has more enthusiasm than every previous version because we want more. If PCIe 8 was ready, that would get the most. So, yeah. I just wanted to highlight it because, hey, and now it's highlight, I think, of Korea being part of the announcement of PCIe 7.
Oh yeah.
Being one of only 2 people. The other one being the PCIe SIG president.
I would hope that he gets quoted.
Yeah, Al. Al and I have had many meetings over the years. So
bigger number, more gooder.
Yes. How notwithstanding. So
if you don't mind, for the last 5 minutes, could we do top 500? Because I just want to real quick talk about that, because in the top 3 there's been no movement other than El Capitan has.
Do you want to explain top 500?
So top 500 is notionally the list of the world's largest supercomputers. However, one of the biggest ones who doesn't submit is China. So we don't we kind of know what China is doing. And in terms of LinPack numbers, which is what HPL or the top 500 is based on, they likely have a larger machine than El Capitan, but there's also a whole bunch of data centers probably right outside my door that have machines, or US East 1 of AWS. Like, that's bigger than El Capitan. So
It's
whether the top 500 is relevant or not, that's up for interpretation.
We speak about AI data centers in the hundreds of megawatts.
Yeah.
The biggest one here, Aurora, is 40.
Yeah.
So chances are, XAI could get a bigger number here if they ran it, but they don't want to because it's an AI machine. However, it's still an interesting set of data.
So one of the announcements is that there's 2 other tests, HPL MXP, which is a mixed precision benchmark for HPL that LCAP ran and is number 1 on that, and the high performance I can never remember what the C stands for, but HPCG, which LCAP ran.
Congruent.
Yes, thank you. And is also number 1 there. So in terms of these lists, El Capitan is the fastest supercomputer in the world. However, that's not what's super interesting to me. The interesting one is actually number 4 there, the Jupyter Booster. That is notionally Europe's first exascale supercomputer. However, if you've noticed, that number isn't quite 1,000.
930.
Yeah, it's for the peak, and then the max is sub 800. Now, they're saying that this was a, quote, partial run. However, if you actually do the math on the cores and then divide out by the amount of cores that Grace has plus the amount of SMs in H100, you get roughly to the nearly 24,000 GPUs that the spec sheet for Jupyter is saying. Whether there's a couple nodes missing potentially, but by that logic, Frontier's latest run is not the full machine. So
yeah,
that's not what I want to talk about.
I do want to add here the Rmax to Rpeak is actually quite good.
Yeah, so
that's an obscure measure of compute efficiency.
Yes. So
Aurora is pretty bad at almost 50%. Good machines get 90 plus. This is what, 80?
Well, I wouldn't say good machine. A lot of the CPU only machines can score high because
compute to memory bandwidth. Yeah.
But something I do want to talk about is how. Do you notice something? How this is NVIDIA GH200? That's because the other part of Jupyter, known as Jupyter Cluster, with the SiPro Rhea chips, has not been run yet because they don't have those chips yet. So while this list has a lot of European supercomputers on it, they ain't any using European hardware.
So do you want to explain Rhea?
So SiPro Rhea is the EU's attempt to make their own HPC processor, essentially. And what it is it's 80 Neoverse V1 cores with 64 gigabytes of HBM2E per CPU, and which is then augmented with 4 DDR5 interfaces, so 4 channels of DDR5 for additional capacity. Now, what you need to know about ARM Neoverse V1 is this is a half-decade old architecture. Neoverse V1 came out in 2020 and is derived off of Cortex X1, which is from 2020, from 2019.
So it's Neoverse V1 was used in Graviton 3.
Yes.
And the whole thing here is that SciPearl as a startup hasn't really been given much money. They've got some chip designers. They're using an ARM IP off the shelf, but they still need to do the physical design, or at least get somebody, hire another company like Broadcom or Alchip to do the physical design. But it's just taken a really, really long time. This press release I've got here is from this time last year at ISC, where they officially announced it, even though we've known about it for at least 4 years prior, 3 or 4 years prior, because it's been government, EU funded, so they have to talk about it, saying that first samples come in 2025. But realistically, is this better or worse than Ampere?
So to me, the actual the better comparison is actually to Fujitsu. It's the A64FX because of the HBM4. Sorry, the HBM2, excuse me.
And that was a 2020 #1 supercomputer in the world.
Yeah.
November 2020, I think.
Yep.
So 4.5 years later, there is now a homegrown EU chip.
And
no. Well, no. The point is there isn't. Yet.
Yeah. No. I was going to say, and both Intel and AMD, though granted AMD is only for a single customer, have since produced CPUs with HBM that likely blow this out of the water.
It's it's like the argument for Rapidus, the new 2nm fab in Japan. The whole idea is that Japanese companies can build leading edge chips, even though when it's ready, it won't be the leading edge, in Japan to get the made in Japan sticker. The point of SciPearl here is to enable HPC, high performance computing supercomputers, that are built in the EU, even if they're not competitive.
What parts of this are built in the EU? That's my issue.
Well,
the cores are from ARM. The interconnect is from ARM, which is a UK company listed in the US. And they're buying presumably HBM stacks from either Samsung.
Well, I was going to say, what wasn't the V1 actually designed in Austin?
I don't remember, but it's
something like that.
Like I know that they have a division in Grenoble, but if I remember correctly, that division deals with smaller cores. It deals with like A55, not the big out of order CPUs. I think you're right. I think this core was either made in Cambridge or in Austin. So what parts of this are European other than putting all the stuff together?
So again, you could argue here of the UK being of the EU. I think that's one of your arguments here. Brexit being Brexit.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and even if the HBM comes from SK Hynix or Micron, that's not EU. The packaging could be because you got to have some form of.
I think it's done at TSMC.
Yeah. The chip itself is taped out at TSMC, I imagine.
Yeah, it's TSMC N6 in 2025 when we're talking about N3 and N2. So
I mean that's fine. The base dies in MI350 are built on N6.
The base dies, not the compute dies. Like this stuff is ancient, and I hesitate to use these words, but DOA,
thanks to both the glorious memory capacity,
generous, not glorious.
Oh, so generous. I was going to say that did sound a bit North Korea for a second. And high bandwidth of in-package HBM, it will deliver extraordinary performance and energy efficiency with an unrivaled byte per flop ratio. I've made several attempts over the years to get in contact with SciPearl. And I'm not saying the problem is that they're French.
But that's what you're saying.
I think I'm on the press release list, but I don't think I've had a press release from them in ages. So somehow they've changed PR agency and I've been pruned, because PR agencies very rarely transfer press lists over, which is annoying. But it's, yeah, neither of us were ISC. I do have seen people in the chat who were at ISC, but again, getting these people to talk about anything more than the deployment and actually focus about the business is rough. But hey, more silicon is interesting, because maybe it means we can go buy one someday for our collections. So is that all you wanted to cover on the top 500?
Yes, it is. That's it.
If anybody's wondering, Fugaku, the A64FX, is still number 7. And on this channel, we've spoken about Monarcha, which is not the evolution, but another one of the lineage sort of thing. I don't think I've seen this one before. HPC 6.
So that was announced of I think two top 500s ago. But yeah, that's a supercomputer for ENI.
Yeah, which we spoke about ENI earlier. They were, yeah, they first on the list November 24, so 6 months ago. Or yeah, the list before this one. And then there's Eagle, which is an OpenAI cluster, part of an OpenAI cluster. Take of that what you will.
Yep.
Yeah. So with that, I think we're going to call it a day. I did want to address one or two questions that you guys did bring up. Darkmann said, as in me personally, can I not nudge AMD to actually do apples to apples comparisons in their communications? We try.
Yeah. And sometimes they listen.
Sometimes you're not speaking to the right person. Sometimes you're not involved early enough. Sometimes they don't involve you at all. The way AMD's engagement with analysts is a little bit different to most other companies, and I'm trying to make it pivot a little bit. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to go to this event, so I wasn't pre-briefed. I wasn't actually sent any of the information. I got it through Ryan, so they actually only gave details to people who attended the event. So, and yeah, it's there's a lot of I don't want to say politics, because politics is the wrong word, but it is what it is. We try. I promise you, we do try.
Yeah. So I managed to get the white paper and the press documentation. My next thing is for them to get the ISA manual out along with the white paper. So
to answer Jay's question, it's not really clear to him how analyst is materially different from the press. So as an analyst, I am under corporate NDA, whereas George is under no NDAs or under specific timed embargoes on certain things. This means I can go into discussions with a company well ahead of whenever George gets involved and help them craft the message, or give them my feedback on what I'm hearing in the industry from either partners or competitors. For example, AIPC launched a Computex last year, AMD, Intel, Qualcomm. All three of those are clients of mine. I worked with all three companies and basically said to them, look, your plus points are this, your competition are going to hit you here. This is how you message what you say that will be put you in the best light against the competition. But I did that with all three companies because each three had obviously different plus points, negative points. They would get, so the question is, should company A even mention company B, right? Imagine if AMD went through this presentation without even mentioning NVIDIA, right? That sort of thing. But it gets more complicated as you put more companies into the mix. And that's just things like message testing and message crafting. Then you have longer term strategy elements in your technical marketing. At least one of my clients, if not two, are currently looking at rebranding, as in changing the full company name. So what's involved in the company name? What's the right pick? How do you then craft a product portfolio? When's the right time to announce it? At what event? How do we do that? How do we engage with the press in order to be able to do that? And then on top of all that, I also have, presence online. So being able to make content about these things, you often, like it was with the PCIe 7 announcement, they're not going to ask somebody from the press to provide a quote for the PCIe 7 announcement. They're going to ask an analyst or a member of the PCIe 7 consortium, of PCI SIG. So that's where analysts play. Analysts speak a lot more about the business rather than just simply the product. As press, you focus so much on product. And George knows this. George has been in some analyst meetings as well sometimes.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because there are some companies that consider us analysts not press, and it's very odd to be on that side of the fence.
It is, because the questions are different. We're not asking about whether the L2 cache is this or whether it's 256 byte wide that. We're asking questions such as what's your go-to-market strategy here? Does the same thing apply in North America as it does in Asia? How are you communicating the rollout of higher memory capacity SKUs to your audience? I'll get sent marketing materials and basically be told, is this the right way to frame this? Or we've had some issue, in the press with our product, and this is the statement we're putting to legal about the solution. Is this the right statement we should be using? And because my background is obviously as press, I get pulled into a lot more of those conversations. Now, other analysts, different, they will do more reports on the supply chain, right? So then we're asking companies like AMD, how many GPUs are you going to ship this quarter? How is your average sales price trending? How is your split between enterprise and neo cloud and CSP? What are your customers telling you about the size of deployments? What are they saying about 8-way versus 72-way versus whatever? How can you talk about how the fact that you've hired 6,000 people in the last year, where have they gone? That sort of thing. You never see many press writing about that. There is one or two. So, people like CRN, Dylan Martin over at CRN, he'll talk about that. The Oregonian focuses a lot on Oregon stuff, so you often hear about executive moves and stuff like that. So it's you're there as a consultant at the end of the day. So some consultants are more engaged with about how. Some consultants are engaged more about the why, and some consultants simply serve the financial industry as prediction tools for those models. So, yeah, Bryan has it kind of here. Think of the press in terms of public interest, while analysts are more in service of private interests. As analysts, I'm also expected to keep abreast with what's going on. This is why I go to IEEE conferences, to hear about the latest and greatest that aren't necessarily business focused yet, but they might be going forward, and people rely on me to go search out that information from time to time. But I still have a public outlet because my audience has changed from an AnTech, right? It's a lot more business focused. It's a lot more investor focused. I still love to do deep dives in architecture. I still make lots of content about companies I don't work with. right, that I don't have a financial engagement with, I don't have a corporate NDA with, because I like talking about stuff. And, you know, some people say, but you're paid by XYZ, why should we listen to you? And that's fine. You don't have to listen to me. Go listen to somebody else. That's absolutely fine. And I said that from the beginning, the minute I changed from press to analyst. If you find this as a conflict of interest, every company I've ever taken money from is in the description of every video. I actually don't think they're in the description of tech routines because there's an issue with cross-posting with LinkedIn. But if you look at any other video, look in the description, you'll see, or any post on my Substack, every company I've ever taken money from is listed there. So if you feel that that provides a conflict of interest, then you're more than welcome to go get your information somewhere else. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because I find it really fun and I love being as honest as I can with everyone. So yeah, and BardFox says here, press reports from outside, analysts analyze from inside or outside, depends if they're hired or not by the company. I mean, but then again, going to an event and getting pre-briefed, is that technically inside? You're not being paid, but
yeah,
that sort of thing. Or if somebody pays George to write a white paper, right, for their company, is that technically inside? But sometimes people might consider that more of an analyst thing to do. But I know it's part of George's business as and when people are interested. So
yeah.
I'm more than open to talk about how I work as an analyst. There are things I can't talk about, obviously, but
So what is AMD planning for MI500?
I'm going to say it's called a GPU.
Someone would fight you on that. Someone would call it an accelerator only.
Bigger number, better.
Yes.
No, but I'll cross-reference that with timing with TSMC. What packaging is TSMC coming out with? What technologies? Or, you know, trolling through LinkedIn profiles is always fun as well.
Actually, so slight tangent on that. RadixGriffin makes a good point. What is ARM planning? Because they're late in announcements this year.
That is on purpose. You'll find out soon. ARM is not a client.
Okay. Because
you'll find
I have not got a response back for them, unfortunately.
You'll find out later rather than sooner. But yeah, there's a reason for that. It will be more obvious later down the line. Yeah, but nothing's going away on that front. And that's pretty much all I can say. They're still committed to deep dives and it will happen.
Okay.
Unfortunately, whether George will be invited or not, I don't know. I'll try and
I don't think I am. It's in Austin this year, isn't it?
Can't say.
Dang it. Because if it's in Austin, then maybe I'll go bang on the door, quite literally.
To be honest, I don't even know what you're talking about.
ARM Tech Day.
What's that?
The thing that they hold basically every year.
Who's ARM? What?
Sorry, I meant leg.
Leg. Leg. I definitely know about leg. I can tell you as much as you want to know about leg. Jay asks, wait, you're going to be in Austin? I haven't actually been to Austin this year.
But it was more a joke about me driving down and then literally banging on their door.
It's going to be in Phoenix a lot later this year. So that's going to be fun.
Yeah, there's stuff in Phoenix. I know that.
Also next week I'm going to be at DAC.
Okay, I won't be.
No, it's yeah. There's a few of my clients presenting, plus also I'm just getting more involved in that side of the industry now. Good to know, Jay. I didn't realize you were in Austin. But we sometimes get invited to Austin for stuff. That would be a really interesting place to visit. Neom. Yeah. Okay, and with that, let's call it a wrap. Many thanks to all of you who have been here from start to finish for yet another one of our tech routines. We really appreciate your support, and it helps us continue to do what we love to do. And we hope you like talking about chips as well. Hopefully all of our links will be in the description below. We'll get timestamps up shortly, but you can find us all on Twitter and our Discord channels. Our written content can be found at more-more.com and chipsandcheese.com. It's a goodbye from me.
And have a good one, folks, from me.
And we'll catch you on the next one. How do we end this thing? If you like this content, there are multiple ways to support the channel. You can like and subscribe this video, and many thanks for doing so. There's also Patreon, which gives you access to our Discord. There's a merchandise store and a newsletter, links in the description. For all of you who do contribute, thank you. You are keeping me well fed.